I am Zoe, 32, and I stood in a dining room that used to be filled with love, watching my family crumble over a single envelope. I looked my father straight in the eye and warned him, one more word from my stepmother about my money, and there would be no more polite conversations. I would deal with her myself, clearly explaining her boundaries, and why my money is not hers. Do you understand? Before I tell you about the silence that followed that warning, and the absolute chaos that erupted when the truth finally came out, let me know in the comments where you are watching from. Seeing how far this story travels means the world to me. That moment at the dinner table wasn't an accident. It was the result of 15 years of biting my tongue. 15 years of watching my life get edited, piece by piece, by a woman who smiled with her teeth, but never with her eyes. To understand why I had to do what I did, you have to understand where I came from. I grew up believing that families broke loudly. I thought it happened with shouting matches, slammed doors, and screaming that neighbors whispered about over the backyard fence. I didn't know families could also break quietly. I didn't know they could break one polite smile at a time, one subtle comment slid under the table like a knife. My mother died when I was 15. Ovarian cancer. It was fast, aggressive, and unforgiving. One summer she was complaining about a dull ache in her side while gardening. By winter, I was standing at her funeral in borrowed black shoes that pinched my heels, while people told me how strong I was. I hated that word. Strong just meant you weren't allowed to fall apart when your world was ending. My father, Robert, was a good man then. But grief does strange things to people. It hollows them out. And when you are hollow, you are easy to fill with someone else's ideas. He waited just under a year before introducing us to Linda. Linda wasn't cruel. Not openly. That was the problem. If she had been the wicked stepmother from the fairy tales, screaming and locking me in the attic, it would have been easier to fight. Instead, Linda was soft. She spoke in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. She touched my arm when she talked to me, pretending we were already close. She brought casseroles to the neighbors and wine to dinner parties. Everyone said how lucky my father was to have found happiness again. I was 17 by then, old enough to know better, but young enough to stay quiet. Linda didn't come alone. She brought Bella. Bella was 12 then, Linda's daughter from a previous marriage. Linda called her her miracle. From the moment they moved in, the dynamic was clear. Bella was the sun, and the rest of us were just planets orbiting her needs. The erasure of my mother happened slowly. It started with the redecorating. "This living room is so dark," Linda said one morning, sipping her coffee. "Your father needs light, Zoe. Grief loves the shadows." I didn't argue. I thought she was trying to help. But bringing in the light meant moving my mother's favorite oak bookshelf to the garage. It meant replacing the cozy, worn armchair my mom used to knit in with a stiff, beige sectional that looked like it belonged in a doctor's waiting room. It meant the photos on the mantel, the ones of me and my mom at the beach, or my parents on their honeymoon, were slowly shuffled to the back, replaced by professional portraits of Linda and Bella. I remember coming home from school one day to find my mother's collection of porcelain angels missing from the hallway cabinet. "Oh, those," Linda said, waving a hand dismissively when I asked. "They were collecting so much dust, sweetie. I boxed them up for safekeeping in the attic. We don't want your dad constantly reminded of the past, do we? We need to focus on the future." The future. Linda loved that word. But I soon realized the future was just code for Linda's security. The first time I really understood who she was, I was 18. I had just received a small check, my portion of a life insurance payout from my mom's policy that had been held in a trust until I turned 18. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough for college tuition or a down payment on a small starter home. We were at dinner. Bella was complaining about her phone being 2 models too old. Linda waited until my father had finished his glass of wine. "You know," she said, looking at me with that practiced concern. I've been thinking about that check, Zoe. 18 is so young to handle that kind of inheritance. The market is volatile. Your father and I were discussing, maybe it's best if we put it into a joint family fund. Just for safekeeping. Until you're mature enough. My father nodded, chewing his steak. She has a point, Zoe. It's a lot of responsibility. I felt a coldness spread through my chest. It's in a savings account, Dad. It's safe. But is it growing? Linda pressed, her smile tight. We're just thinking about the family's total assets. We need to pool our resources to ensure everyone is taken care of. Everyone. That meant Bella. That meant Linda. I'm not touching it, I said, my voice shaking slightly. It's for my education. Linda sighed, a sound of pure disappointment. Well. We're just trying to help. No need to be defensive. She dropped it, but the air in the room had changed. I saw her eyes flick to my father, a silent communication that said, she's being difficult. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to stay in that house and watch my mother disappear completely. I wasn't going to wait for them to guilt-trip me out of the only thing my mother had left me. 2 months later, I enlisted in the army. When I told my father, he looked shocked, maybe even a little sad. But Linda? Linda looked relieved. One less obstacle in her house. The day I left for basic training, my father hugged me hard in the driveway. He smelled like Old Spice and the sawdust from his workshop, a smell I missed. I'm proud of you, Zoe, he whispered. Promise me something, I said, pulling back to look at him. My room. Mom's things in the closet. Don't let her touch them. Please. He nodded, eyes wet. I promise. That room is yours. Always. Linda stood by the door, crying just enough to look supportive without ruining her mascara. We'll take care of everything here, she said. You just focus on your future. I believed him. Or maybe I just needed to. As the taxi pulled away, I watched them standing there. My father, looking smaller than I remembered, and Linda, her hand resting firmly on his shoulder, like she was steering a ship. I didn't know then that promises made to keep the peace are the first ones to be broken. I didn't know that while I was crawling through mud and learning how to dismantle a rifle in the pouring rain, Linda was dismantling my life back home. I spent the next 4 years learning discipline. The military stripped away the soft, unsure girl I had been and replaced her with a logistics officer who valued order, precision, and facts. I learned that in the field, emotions could get you killed. You needed a clear head. You needed to assess the threat, gather intelligence, and strike only when you had the advantage. Those lessons saved my life. And years later, they would be the only things standing between me and financial ruin. It started with a phone call during my 2nd year of service. I was stationed in Germany, feeling a million miles away from the drama of my hometown. My phone buzzed. It was Dad. Hey, kiddo, he sounded tired. How's it going? We talked for a few minutes about the weather and my latest promotion, which came with a decent pay bump. Then, I heard Linda's voice in the background. Ask her, Robert, she whispered. It was loud enough for the microphone to pick up. Ask me what? I said, my guard going up instantly. My father cleared his throat. Well, Linda, we were looking at the finances. Inflation is hitting hard here, Zoe. And with Bella starting her business ventures, things are tight. What does that have to do with me, Dad? We were wondering, Linda's voice came onto the line now, smooth as silk. Since you're living on base, and you have all your meals paid for, you must be saving quite a bit of that salary. We were thinking, just as a loan, purely a loan, if you could help with the mortgage this month. Just until Bella's brand takes off. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. I was waking up at 5 a.m., running drills, managing supply chains for thousands of troops, and she wanted my money to subsidize Bella's brand. Bella, who had never worked a real job in her life. I can't, Dad, I said, ignoring Linda. My money is tied up. Investments. Investments. Linda's tone sharpened. What kind of investments? You know, family should be the priority investment. I have to go, Sergeant is calling, I lied and hung up. I stared at the phone, my heart hammering. It wasn't the request that scared me. It was the entitlement. The way she felt comfortable asking for my paycheck like it was community property. But that was just the seed. The real betrayal was growing in the dark, fed by my absence and my father's silence. And the next time I went home, I would realize just how deep the roots had gone. The military teaches you to live with less. My life fit into a footlocker. I own 3 pairs of boots, my uniforms, and a few civilian outfits. My bank account, however, told a different story. I was frugal. I maxed out my savings plans, I invested carefully, and I barely spent a dime on frivolous things. I was building a fortress of security because I knew, deep down, that I was the only one who would ever look out for me. Contrast that with the world I stepped back into when I took leave to visit home 2 years later. I pulled my rental car into the driveway of my childhood home. The house looked different. The paint was peeling slightly around the trim, and the lawn was overgrown. It looked neglected. But parked right in the center of the driveway, shining like a diamond in a pile of coal, was a brand new white Porsche Macan. I stared at it. It had paper plates. I grabbed my duffel bag and walked to the front door. Before I could even knock, the door swung open. Linda stood there, wearing a silk kaftan that probably cost more than my monthly food budget. Zoe, she shrieked, pulling me into a hug that smelled of expensive perfume and wine. Look at you. So utilitarian. She eyed my simple jeans and t-shirt with a mix of pity and distaste. Hi, Linda, I said, stepping past her. Where's Dad? Oh, he's in the garage. Tinkering, she waved a hand. Come say hi to Bella. She's just so excited to see you. I walked into the kitchen. Sitting at the counter, my mother's old counter, which had been resurfaced with cold, modern marble, was Bella. She was 25 now, staring at her phone, ring light set up in front of her. Hey, guys. My stepsister just got home from the army. Bella shouted at her phone screen, forcing a bright smile. Then she looked at me, her face falling instantly as the camera cut off. Hey, Zoe. God, you look tired. Doesn't the army have moisturizer? Nice to see you too, Bella, I said, pouring myself a glass of water. Whose Porsche is in the driveway? Bella smirked, flipping her long, blonde hair. Mine. Isn't she a beauty? It's essential for my image. I'm an influencer now, Zoe. You have to look the part to get the brand deals. Influencer? I asked. What do you influence? Lifestyle. Beauty. Wellness, Bella said defensively. It's a real job. Just because you sweat in the dirt for a living doesn't mean you understand the digital economy. I looked at Linda. A Porsche? Dad said things were tight on the phone. Linda's smile didn't waver. It's a lease, Zoe. Very reasonable. And it's an investment in Bella's future. Once her channel takes off, she'll be paying for all of us. You have to spend money to make money. I found my father in the garage. He looked older. More tired. He was fixing a toaster, of all things. Dad, I said. He looked up and for a second, I saw the father I used to know. He hugged me, wiping grease on his pants first. You're home. Dad, the car, I whispered. How can you afford a Porsche in the driveway when you said you couldn't pay the mortgage? He sighed, rubbing his temples. It's complicated, Zoe. Linda says Bella needs a boost. It's in my name, but Bella is supposed to make the payments once her sponsors come through. Supposed to? I felt a headache forming. Dad, that's an $80,000 car. If she misses a payment, it ruins your credit. Not hers. She's trying, Zoe. Don't be so hard on her. Linda says we need to support her dreams. And who supports you? I asked. Who supports your retirement? He looked away. Let's not fight. You just got here. I went upstairs to my room. Or what was supposed to be my room. I opened the door and froze. My bed was gone. My posters were gone. The closet where I kept my mother's old coats and boxes. Empty. Instead, the room was filled with racks of clothes, piles of shoeboxes, and shipping supplies. It looked like a warehouse for a failing boutique. What is this? I asked, my voice trembling. Linda appeared behind me. Oh, we needed the space for Bella's inventory. Her merchandise. We didn't think you'd mind since you're never here. I asked Dad to keep this room, I said, turning to face her. I asked for one thing. Where are Mom's boxes? Where are the photo albums? In the shed, Linda said casually. They're fine. Don't be so dramatic. This is a business, Zoe. Bella is building an empire. I walked out to the backyard shed. It was damp and smelled of mildew. I found my mother's boxes stacked haphazardly in a corner. A spider web covered the box labeled Zoe's Childhood. I opened it. The photos were curling from the humidity. I sat on the cold concrete floor and cried. Not loud sobbing but silent, angry tears. This was the moment the last thread of family snapped. They hadn't just moved my things, they had displaced my existence. I was no longer a daughter here. I was an inconvenience. Over the next few days, I watched the dynamic play out. Linda was the queen, Bella was the princess, and Robert was the servant. Every conversation circled back to money. Zoe, did you get that combat bonus? Linda asked over breakfast. I read online that officers get a significant bump for deployment. It went into my retirement fund, I said, cutting my eggs aggressively. Retirement? Bella laughed. You're 30. You should be living. You know, Liam, my boyfriend, he says people who hoard money have a scarcity mindset. He says you manifest wealth by spending it. Does Liam have a job? I asked. He's a visionary, Bella snapped. He's developing an app. Right, I said. Well, my scarcity mindset means I don't have to ask my daddy to co-sign a lease on a car I can't afford. The table went silent. That was uncalled for, Linda said, her voice icy. We are a family. We help each other. We don't judge. You asked about my bonus, I countered. I'm just telling you where it went. It's my money. Just like Bella's brand is her business. Well, Linda said, taking a sip of wine. It's good to know you're so secure. Not many families have that kind of stability these days. It must be nice to have the government paying for your housing, your food, your medical. You barely have any expenses. It's almost unfair, isn't it? Compared to civilians. I signed a contract up to and including my life, I said. That's the cost. Still, Linda mused, eyes glittering. You have so much surplus. And here we are, struggling to keep the house warm. I looked at my father. He was staring at his plate, pushing peas around with a fork. He wouldn't look at me. He wouldn't defend me. That's when I realized, Linda wasn't just greedy. She was envious. She hated that I had something she couldn't control. She hated that I had built a life without her. And she was determined to get a piece of it, one way or another. The last straw of that visit happened on the morning I was leaving. I was packing my bag in the guest room, because my room was a warehouse, when I heard shouting from the kitchen. "You promised, Mom." Bella's voice. "I know, baby, I know. I'm working on it," Linda's voice soothing but stressed. "Liam needs the investment capital by next month, or we lose the developer. You said you'd find the money." "I will. I have a plan," Linda said. "Your sister is gone for another deployment soon. Just be patient. Once I get the access, we can restructure some things." "Dad is almost on board." I froze. "Once I get the access." I walked out to the hallway, listening. "But Dad is a coward," Bella whined. "He won't ask her again." "He won't have to ask," Linda said, her voice dropping to a whisper that carried down the hall. "We're family. In emergencies, family can step in. We just need to create the right necessity." I backed into the guest room, my heart pounding in my ears. I didn't know exactly what she meant, but the word access terrified me. I drove away that day without saying goodbye to Linda or Bella. I hugged my dad and whispered, "Check your credit report, Dad. Please." He just patted my back, his eyes vacant. "Safe travels, Zoe." I returned to base, but I didn't leave my suspicions at the door. I activated every alert on my bank accounts. I put a freeze on my credit. I told my friends I was being paranoid. I wasn't paranoid enough. 6 months later, the first alarm bell rang. I was in the middle of a logistics briefing when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I usually ignored it, but something made me check. It was a security notification from my bank. Alert: failed login attempt. IP address located in my hometown. Incorrect security question answer. I stared at the screen. The blood drained from my face. My father didn't know how to use online banking. He still wrote checks at the grocery store. There was only one person in that house who would try to access my account online. Linda. I logged in immediately and changed my password to a string of random characters 20 digits long. I changed my security questions. Mother's maiden name. No. Too easy. I changed it to name of first pet, and put in a fake answer only I would know. I called my father that night. "Dad, did you try to log into my bank account?" I asked, skipping the pleasantries. "What?" "No," he sounded confused. "Why would I do that?" "Someone from your house did. The IP address matches." "Oh," he paused. I could hear the TV in the background. Well, Linda was trying to help me set up our own online banking. Maybe she got the usernames mixed up. You know she's not great with technology. My username is not your username, Dad. And she tried to answer my security questions. "Zoe, you're overreacting." His voice took on that defensive edge he always used when I criticized Linda. "It was an accident. She probably just clicked the wrong link. Don't be so suspicious of everyone." "It's not everyone. It's her." "I don't want to hear this," he snapped. "Linda loves you. She talks about you all the time." "I bet she does," I muttered. The second red flag was bigger. It wasn't a digital attempt, it was a public declaration of ownership. I came home for Aunt Margaret's 70th birthday party. It was a big gathering, extended family, cousins I hadn't seen in years, neighbors. A classic American backyard barbecue, red cups and potato salad. I was wearing a nice dress, trying to blend in, trying to be the good daughter. Linda was holding court near the punch bowl, surrounded by my aunts and uncles. She waved me over. "Here she is. Our hero." Linda beamed, wrapping an arm around my waist. It felt like a snake coiling. "We were just talking about the future, Zoe." Aunt Margaret smiled. "Linda tells us you're doing so well, dear. It must be a relief to have that military pension waiting for you." I'm 32, Aunt Margaret. Pension is a long way off, I said, forcing a smile. But the stability. Linda interjected, her voice loud enough for the group to hear. With Zoe's income and her bonuses, honestly, it's such a relief for Robert and me. To know that if anything happens to us, or if Bella needs a little push, the resources are there. We're very lucky to have a daughter who can support the family estate. I froze. The cup in my hand crushed slightly. Support the estate? What do you mean? Linda laughed, a tinkling, fake sound. Oh, you know. We're all in this together. With the cost of healthcare and the house repairs, it's just good to know that your accounts are robust. We consider your success our success. My money is my own, Linda, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it was firm. The conversation around us died down. Of course, dear, she patted my shoulder, digging her nails in slightly. But families share burdens. And blessings. I was just telling your uncle that with your salary, we might finally be able to redo the roof this year. I stepped away from her. I am not paying for a new roof. And I'm not paying for Bella's car. This isn't the place, my father hissed, appearing at my elbow. He looked panicked. Zoe, stop. She's spending my money in her head before I've even earned it, Dad. I whispered back furiously. She's just proud of you, he insisted. Why do you have to twist everything? I walked away to cool off near the garage. That's when I heard it. Bella was on the phone, pacing behind the trellis. No, Liam, listen. Mom says it's almost sorted, Bella was saying. Yeah, the Porsche payments are 2 months behind, I know. But Mom says she's getting the power of attorney. She's working on Dad. He's almost broken. Once we have that, we can access the secondary accounts. I stopped breathing. Power of attorney. They weren't just looking for a loan. They were looking for total control. If they got power of attorney over me, maybe claiming I was deployed and unable to manage my affairs, or incompetent, they could drain everything. They could take the college fund I was saving for a future degree, my savings, my retirement. I didn't confront Bella. I didn't run back to scream at Linda. The army had taught me better. When you intercept enemy communications, you don't reveal your position. You gather more intel. I walked back into the party, grabbed a beer and smiled. I'm sorry, Dad, I told him later. I was just stressed. He looked relieved. It's okay, honey. Just try to be more generous. Spiritually. I will, I lied. The next morning, I told them I had to report back to base early. I didn't. Instead, I checked into a Motel 6 3 towns over. I had 3 days of leave left. I was going to use them to launch an investigation into my own family. I needed help. I called the one person I trusted with my life, Sarah. Sarah was a JAG officer, military lawyer, I'd served with. Sarah, I need you to tell me everything about financial fraud and power of attorney, I said. Who is it? She asked immediately. Boyfriend. Stepmother, I said. Copy that, Sarah said, her voice shifting into combat mode. First rule, do not confront them until you have the paper trail. If they know you know, they'll shred everything. You need hard evidence. You need intent. I heard my stepsister mention POA. That's intent, Sarah said darkly. Zoe, you need to check your credit report now. And you need to see if there are any documents in that house with your name on them. I can't get back in. I told them I left. You have a key. Yes. Wait until they leave. Go in. Find the paper. Photograph everything. If they are trying to get POA, there will be forms. If they've forged your signature, there will be practice sheets. Check the trash. Check the home office. My stomach churned. I was going to break into my childhood home to prove my father's wife was a criminal. One more thing, Sarah added. Check for life insurance policies on you. If they're desperate enough. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I spent the next 24 hours in that motel room, staring at the ceiling. I cycled through anger, grief, and disbelief. How could my father be part of this? Was he a victim or an accomplice? He knew about the car. He knew about the requests for money. He had defended her every time. I realized then that enabler was too soft a word. He was a collaborator. He was trading my financial future for peace in his marriage. He was selling me out to keep Linda happy. That hurt more than the theft. On Tuesday morning, I sat in my rental car down the street from the house. I watched my father's truck pull out. He was going to the hardware store. Then, 20 minutes later, Linda and Bella left in the Porsche. I knew their schedule. Tuesday was spa day, a necessity they apparently couldn't afford but did anyway. I waited 5 minutes. Then I drove up, unlocked the front door, and stepped into the silence of the house. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a crime scene. I pulled on a pair of latex gloves, I had them in my first aid kit, and went straight to the home office. The home office was a mess of papers. My mother used to keep this room immaculate, files color-coded, bills paid the day they arrived. Now piles of unopened envelopes cluttered the desk. Final notice, past due, collections. My heart broke for my father, just for a second. He was drowning and he didn't even know how to swim. But then I remembered the Porsche in the driveway and the pity evaporated. I started digging. I found the usual stuff first, credit card bills for Linda with balances of $15,000, $20,000. Charges for designer boutiques, luxury resorts, cosmetic surgery consultations. They were living a millionaire's lifestyle on a pensioner's income. Then I found the folder. It was tucked behind a row of tax manuals on the bottom shelf. It was a bright red folder labeled Planning. I opened it. The first page made my knees buckle. It was a spreadsheet. At the top it said Projected Assets, Family Consolidation. There were columns. Column A, Robert's Pension. Column B, House Equity. Column C, Zoe's Military Assets. Under my name, they had listed everything. My estimated savings. My life insurance payout value, service members group life insurance, $400,000. My future pension value. They had done the math on my death. I flipped the page. A draft letter to a bank, inquiring about adding a cosigner to an existing account due to deployment unavailability. It was typed, but there were handwritten notes in the margins in Linda's loopy script. Note, tell them she is in a combat zone and cannot sign. Ask for emergency protocol. Next page. A filled-out application for a home equity line of credit, HELOC, on the house my mother paid for. The application listed me as a guarantor. And there at the bottom was a signature. Zoe Miller. It looked frighteningly like my signature. I pulled out my phone and started photographing. Click. 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 My hands were shaking, but the photos were clear. I photographed the spreadsheet, the letters, the practice sheets where someone, Bella, judging by the doodle of a heart next to it, had practiced writing my name over and over. Then I found the smoking gun. It was a letter from a car dealership. Guarantee agreement for Portia McCung. Dear Mrs. Miller, thank you for providing the additional income verification for your stepdaughter, Zoe Miller. As discussed, since she is co-signing, we can overlook the primary applicant's credit score. I hadn't co-signed anything. They had stolen my identity to lease that car. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to sit down in my father's leather chair. They hadn't just planned it. They had already done it. I was legally on the hook for an $80,000 car. If Bella stopped paying, which she clearly already had, my credit score would be destroyed. I could lose my security clearance. I could lose my commission as an officer. This wasn't just family drama. This was sabotage. I heard a car door slam outside. Panic spiked. They were back early. I shoved the papers back into the red folder, put the folder back on the shelf exactly how I found it, and stripped off the gloves. I couldn't get out the front door without being seen. "Did you forget your wallet?" Linda's voice drifted from the hallway. "I think so," Bella answered. I slipped into the small closet behind the desk, the one where the Wi-Fi router was kept. I pulled the door shut just as Bella walked into the office. Through the slats, I saw her rummaging through the desk. "God, where is it?" she muttered. She grabbed a credit card from the drawer, my father's presumably, and walked out. I waited 10 minutes after the car drove away before I exhaled. I left the house, locked the door, and drove back to the motel. I called Sarah immediately. "I have it," I said. "They forged my signature on a car lease. And they're planning to leverage my income for a loan on the house." "Okay," Sarah said, her voice deadly calm. "Now we have them. But Zoe, you can't just sue them yet. You need to trap them. You need them to admit that you haven't authorized this, in front of witnesses. Otherwise, they'll claim you gave verbal permission, and just changed your mind." "How do I do that?" "Bait the hook," Sarah said. "Make them think you're ready to hand over the keys." I formulated a plan. It was cruel. It was manipulative. It was exactly what they deserved. I called my father that evening. I made my voice sound small, exhausted. "Dad," I said. "I've been thinking. You were right." "Right about what?" "About the money. Managing it alone, it's really hard. The army is so demanding right now. I'm tired, Dad. Maybe I do need help managing the estate." I could practically hear him perking up. "Oh, honey. I'm so glad you said that. Linda was just saying we should help you unburden yourself." "Yeah," I said. "I'm coming back next weekend. For Mother's Day. I think it's the right time to sit down and sign some papers. To make things official." "That's wonderful, Zoe. Linda will be thrilled. We'll organize a big dinner. We can celebrate." "Yes," I said, staring at the photo of my forged signature on my laptop screen. "Let's celebrate." I spent the next week preparing. I didn't just meet with Sarah, I met with a civilian fraud attorney. I met with Mrs. Vance, a specialist at my bank. We prepared a fraud packet. It contained the police report affidavits, drafted but not filed, the bank fraud alerts, and the cease and desist letters. I also went to the county recorder's office. I discovered something else. My mother had left the house in a trust, with my father as the trustee, but I was the beneficiary upon his death. However, there was a clause: if the trustee attempted to encumber the property with debt without the beneficiary's consent, the trusteeship could be revoked. They were trying to take a loan out on a house that was technically mine to protect. I had everything I needed. On Mother's Day, I put on my dress uniform. It felt like armor. I drove to the house. The driveway was full. Aunt Margaret was there. Uncle Ben. Liam, the visionary boyfriend. I grabbed the thick manila envelope from the passenger seat. I took a deep breath. "Showtime," I whispered. I walked in. Linda practically floated towards me, wearing a dress that looked like a wedding gown. "Zoe. Our soldier returns," she announced. "And I see you brought the paperwork." She eyed the envelope in my hand. "I did," I smiled. "Everything we need to settle this, once and for all." "Perfect," she clapped her hands. "We'll do it after dinner. Let's eat first." I made your favorite, well, I made Bella's favorite, lobster bisque, but I'm sure you'll love it. We sat down. The table was set with my mother's good china, the china Linda had sworn was too old-fashioned to use, but was apparently fine for her victory lap. I sat across from my father. He looked nervous. He kept touching his tie. He knew something was happening, but he was too weak to stop the train. Linda stood up to make a toast. To family, she said, raising her glass. To overcoming differences. And to Zoe, for finally realizing that family means sharing everything. Today we become a true unit. To the unit. Bella cheered, clinking glasses with Liam. I didn't drink. I just watched them. Vultures in silk. Actually, I said, standing up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. Before we get to dessert, I think we should handle the business. Since everyone is here. Oh, eager. Linda laughed. I like it. Robert, get the pen. I don't need a pen, Linda, I said. I picked up the envelope and held it over the center of the table. You wanted to talk about my money, I said. You wanted to talk about my future. About security. Yes, sweetie, Linda smiled, reaching for the envelope. I pulled it back. I looked my father straight in the eye and warned him, one more word from my stepmother about my money, and there would be no more polite conversations. I would deal with her myself, clearly explaining her boundaries, and why my money is not hers. Do you understand? The room went dead silent. Zoe, my father whispered. You didn't listen, Dad, I said. So now, I'm speaking to everyone. I dropped the envelope on the table. It landed with a heavy thud. The sound of that envelope hitting the table was louder than a gunshot. It sat there between the roast beef and the lobster bisque, a thick, heavy accusation. What is this? Linda asked, her smile faltering at the edges. She reached for it, her manicured fingers hesitating. Open it, I said. My voice was steady. Cold. It's the gift you wanted. Total transparency. Linda tore open the flap. She expected to see a power of attorney form. She expected a check. Instead, she pulled out a stack of papers clipped together with red warnings. The first page was a blown-up photograph of the guarantee agreement for the Porsche, with the forged signature circled in bright red marker. Linda froze. Her face went from confused to pale in a split second. Bella, sitting next to her, craned her neck. What is that? It's a lease agreement, I said, addressing the whole table. For a 2024 Porsche Macan. Registered to Bella Miller. Co-signed by Zoe Miller. Aunt Margaret gasped. Zoe, you bought her a car. No, Aunt Margaret, I said, locking eyes with Bella. I didn't. I've never seen this document in my life until I found it in my father's home office 3 days ago. Bella dropped her fork. It clattered against the china. You were in the office. I was, I said. And I found it very interesting that my signature is on this paper, considering I was stationed in Fort Bragg the day it was signed. It's a misunderstanding, Linda stammered, shoving the papers back into the envelope. Robert, tell her. We were going to ask her, it was just paperwork in process. It's not in process, Linda. I slammed my hand on the table. The car is in the driveway. The loan is active. That is identity theft. That is a felony. The word felony hung in the air. Liam shifted in his seat, looking like he wanted to bolt. Zoe, please, my father stood up, his hands shaking. Not here. Not in front of everyone. Sit down, Dad, I commanded. It was my officer's voice. He sat. I'm not done, I said. Keep looking in the envelope, Linda. She didn't move. So I reached over and pulled out the next document. This, I held it up, is a cease and desist order from the specialized fraud unit at my bank. And this, I slapped another paper down, is an affidavit I prepared with the JAG Corps. It details the attempt to take out a home equity line of credit on my mother's house using my name as a guarantor. It's our house. Linda shrieked, dropping the mask. Her face twisted into something ugly. I have lived here for 15 years. I take care of your father. I deserve security. You deserve what you earn. I yelled back. You don't get to steal my credit score because your daughter wants to play Kardashian. I turned to Bella. And you? You drive around in a car you can't afford, pretending you're successful, while I risk my life. You think I'm just a bank account? I needed it for the brand. Bella was crying now, mascara running. You have so much money, Zoe. You just let it sit there. It's selfish. Selfish. I laughed, a harsh, dry sound. Selfish is stealing. Selfish is forgery. We were going to pay it back, my father pleaded. Zoe, please. Linda said the business would take off next month. We were going to refinance and take your name off. We just needed a bridge. You forged my name, Dad. I looked at him with pure heartbreak. You committed a crime against your own daughter. I didn't sign it, he whispered. No, I pulled out the last piece of paper. It was the witness line on the lease agreement. But you witnessed it. Robert Miller. That's your signature verifying that Zoe Miller signed this document. You lied for them. My father put his head in his hands. Aunt Margaret stood up. She looked furious. Robert? Is this true? You stole from Helen's daughter. She's my daughter too. Robert cried. Then start acting like it. I shouted. The room was spinning with tension. Linda stood up, her chest heaving. Get out. Get out of my house. It's not your house, I said. And that brings me to the final document. I pulled out a blue folder. This is a petition to revoke the trusteeship of the Helen Miller estate, I said calmly. My lawyer filed it this morning. Since you, Robert Miller, attempted to encumber the trust property with debt without the beneficiary's consent, and by using fraud, you have violated the terms of the trust. Linda's eyes went wide. What does that mean? It means, I said, savoring the words, that the house goes to me. Immediately. Dad loses control. Which means you lose control. You can't do that, Linda hissed. We'll be homeless. You have 30 days, I said. Unless. Unless what? My father asked, looking up. Unless you sign everything I put in front of you tomorrow at my lawyer's office. You accept full liability for the Porsche debt. You sign a confession of judgment for the credit cards you opened in my name. And you agree to vacate the house within 6 months so I can sell it. Sell it. Linda screamed. This is my home. It was my mother's home. I screamed back. And you have disrespected her memory and her daughter long enough. I looked around the table. Liam was texting under the table, probably breaking up with Bella. Uncle Ben was staring at his shoes. This dinner is over, I said. Happy Mother's Day, Linda. I hope the gift was memorable. I turned to walk away. I'll sue you. Linda screamed after me. I'll tell everyone you abandoned your elderly father. I stopped at the door. I turned back. Go ahead, I said. Tell them. And I'll show them the police report for identity theft. I haven't filed it yet, Linda. I'm giving you 24 hours to sign my deal. If you don't, I walk into the police station, and Bella goes to prison for fraud. And Dad goes for accessory. Bella wailed. Mom. Do something. I can't go to jail. Linda looked at her daughter, then at her husband, then at me. She realized, finally, that she had no cards left to play. I walked out into the cool night air. My hands were shaking, but my head was clear. I didn't go far. I sat in my rental car down the street, watching the house. About 10 minutes after I left, Liam ran out to his car and sped off. Bella followed him, screaming, but he didn't stop. Then Aunt Margaret and Uncle Ben left. Aunt Margaret paused by my rental car. She tapped on the window. I rolled it down. I didn't know, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Zoe, I swear. Linda bragged about your help, but I didn't know they were stealing. I know, Aunt Margaret, I said. Do what you have to do, she said, reaching in to squeeze my hand. Your mother would be proud of you. You have her backbone. That meant more to me than she knew. The next morning, I was sitting in the conference room of Sterling and Associates, the toughest civilian law firm in town. My lawyer, Mr. Sterling, was a man who smiled like a shark. He had the papers ready. At 9 a.m. sharp, my father walked in. He looked like he had aged 10 years overnight. He was wearing the same clothes as the night before. Linda and Bella followed. Linda was wearing big sunglasses, trying to hide her swollen eyes. Bella looked terrified, clutching a Starbucks cup like a lifeline. They sat on the opposite side of the long mahogany table. Here are the terms, Mr. Sterling slid the documents across. Acknowledgement of debt, Bella and Robert admit that the Porsche lease was unauthorized. They agree to assume full responsibility for the debt immediately or return the vehicle and pay the penalty. Identity theft confession, a sworn statement detailing the forgery. This would be held in escrow. If they ever tried to contact my bank, my commanding officer, or slander me again, the confession would be released to the district attorney. The trust transfer, Robert voluntarily steps down as trustee. The house title transfers to a holding trust controlled by me. They are granted a revocable license to live there for 6 months to find a new place. After that, the house is sold. Linda read the papers. Her hands were trembling. 6 months, she whispered. Zoe, where will we go? The housing market is terrible. You have a Porsche, I said without looking up from my phone. Maybe you can live in that. This is cruel, my father said. I'm your father. And you were supposed to protect me, I said, finally looking at him. You chose her comfort over my safety. You chose to let them commit a felony against me because you were too afraid to say no to your wife. That has consequences, Dad. I was trying to keep the peace, he said weakly. Peace at my expense isn't peace, Dad, I said. It's a hostage situation. Mr. Sterling tapped the table. Sign, or we call the detective. He's expecting a call by 10 a.m. Bella grabbed the pen first. She was sobbing. I'm sorry, Zoe. I'm sorry. I just wanted, everyone has nice things. Work for them, I said. Like I did. Bella signed. Then my father. He hesitated. He looked at Linda. Robert, Linda warned. If you sign that, we lose the house. If I don't sign it, Robert said, his voice cracking, our daughter goes to prison. And so do I. He signed. Linda let out a sound of pure rage. She grabbed the pen and scribbled her name, tearing the paper slightly. I hope you're happy, she spat at me. You have your money. You have the house. You have everything. And you have no family. I took the signed papers and put them in my bag. I stood up and smoothed my uniform. I have my dignity, I said. And I have my mother's memory. That's enough. I walked out of that office and didn't look back. The aftermath was swift. Bella returned the Porsche the next day. The dealership was furious, but with the affidavit of fraud, they unwound the lease to avoid a lawsuit from me. The penalties wiped out my father's meager savings, the money Linda hadn't spent yet. Liam broke up with Bella publicly on social media, calling her a fraud. It was petty, but I admit, I watched the video twice. My father and Linda moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment across town. It was a step down from the house, but it was within their actual means. As for the house, I went back one last time after they moved out. It was empty. The beige sectional was gone. The ugly curtains were gone. I walked into the living room. It was quiet. Sunlight streamed through the windows, the light Linda had always talked about, but now it felt clean. I walked to the backyard shed. I spent 2 days moving my mother's boxes back into the house. I put her porcelain angels back in the cabinet. I put her books back on the shelves. I wasn't going to live there. I had my career, my life in the military, but I prepared the house to be sold to a nice young family. A family that would fill it with real laughter, not manipulation. But before I sold it, I sat in the empty living room and spoke to my mom. I handled it, Mom, I said aloud. They didn't win. I felt a peace I hadn't felt in 15 years. My father tried to call me a few months later. A voicemail. Zoe, it's Dad. I miss you. Linda is, well, things are hard. She's very unhappy in the apartment. I was hoping maybe we could talk. I didn't delete the message. I archived it. Put it in a folder labeled Evidence. I didn't call back. Forgiveness is a personal choice, but access is a privilege. He had lost the privilege of access to me. He had made his choice years ago. I was just finally accepting it. Today, I'm a major. I have my own house, bought with my own money, with my name on the deed. I have a circle of friends who are my chosen family. And I have a credit score of 800. Some people say I was too hard on them. That family is family, no matter what. But I learned that family is an action, not a noun. If your family steals from you, lies to you, and treats you like a resource to be harvested, they aren't family. They are parasites. And you don't negotiate with parasites. You exterminate them. Time has a funny way of clarifying things. When you're in the middle of the battle, all you see is the smoke and the mud. You're just trying to survive the next 5 minutes. It's only when the dust settles, when you climb to the high ground and look back, that you see the shape of the war you just won. It has been exactly 1 year since I walked out of Mr. Sterling's office with those signed papers in my bag. 1 year since I drew a line in the sand that turned into a canyon. People ask me if I regret it. They ask if I miss having a father to call on Sundays, or if I feel guilty about evicting an older couple. I usually just smile and take a sip of my coffee, paid for with my own money, in a kitchen that no one can take away from me. Regret? No. Relief? It washes over me every single morning like the tide. The first few months after the Mother's Day massacre, as Aunt Margaret calls it, were busy. I didn't keep the house. That was a decision that surprised a lot of people, including myself. I had fought so hard for it, threatened legal action for it, and terrified Linda with the prospect of losing it. But once I had the keys, once I stood in those empty rooms with my mother's boxes packed and ready to go, I realized something. It wasn't my home anymore. It was just a building where bad things had happened. It was haunted not by ghosts, but by 15 years of manipulation. Every corner held a memory I didn't want. The kitchen island where Linda made her passive-aggressive comments about my weight. The living room where my father sat in his armchair, turning up the TV to drown out my voice. The driveway where that white Porsche had sat, mocking my hard work. So I sold it. I sold it to a young couple with a golden retriever and a baby on the way. They walked in and saw potential and light. I saw a crime scene being cleared. The money from the sale was significant. I took half of it and put it into a high-yield trust for my future children, if I ever have them. I took the other half and bought a townhome near the base. My new place isn't a sprawling estate. It doesn't have a marble countertop or a 3-car garage. But it has something better. It has walls that only hear my truth. It has a security system that I control. And when I unlock the door at night, the air inside is still and sweet. It smells like lavender and peace. My career took off. Without the constant background radiation of family stress, I found I had more energy. I was promoted to major ahead of schedule. My commanding officer, Colonel Miller, told me at my review, "Zoe, your focus is terrifyingly good. You anticipate problems before they happen." I wanted to tell him, "Sir, when you grow up sleeping with one eye open because you're afraid your stepmother is reading your diary or your bank statements, anticipating problems becomes a survival reflex." But while I was rising, the Miller-Linda empire was crumbling. Small towns are efficient information networks. I didn't have to ask about them, the news found me. Aunt Margaret, bless her heart, tried to respect my boundaries, but she couldn't help dropping updates during our monthly lunches. "It's not good, Zoe," she told me about for months after the eviction. We were eating salads at a cafe downtown. "Linda is, well, she's not handling the apartment life well." "Oh?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "They moved into that complex on the east side. You know the one? Near the highway." Margaret whispered. "It's noisy. The walls are thin." Linda told me her neighbor plays heavy metal music until 2 a.m. I took a bite of my salad. "That's unfortunate." "She's working," Margaret added, watching my face for a reaction. "At the mall. The cosmetics counter at Macy's. She stands on her feet for 8 hours a day." I paused. Linda, who used to spend her days managing the household and planning charity galas that never happened, was now earning minimum wage plus commission selling lipstick to teenagers. "And Dad?" I asked. "He's quiet," Margaret said. "He's working part-time at the hardware store again. Bagging bolts. He looks tired, Zoe. He asks about you." "I'm sure he does," I said. "He asks because he misses the buffer I provided. He misses having someone to blame when Linda is unhappy." Margaret nodded slowly. "You're probably right. But the worst part is Bella." "Let me guess," I said. "The brand didn't take off." "The brand imploded," Margaret said. "After Liam dumped her publicly, she lost whatever small following she had. She tried to pivot to wellness coaching, but no one wants life advice from a girl who had to return a repoed Porsche. She's living on your dad's couch in the apartment. Linda is furious. Apparently, they scream at each other all day." I felt a twinge of something, not pity, exactly. Maybe validation. The toxicity I had lived with wasn't caused by me. I had just been the lightning rod. Once I removed myself, the lightning had nowhere to go but back into the house, burning everything down. They were eating each other alive. I didn't see them for a long time. I avoided the places they went. I shopped at different stores, drove different routes. But the universe has a sense of humor, and coincidences are just fate's way of checking if you're still paying attention. It happened on a Tuesday evening, almost exactly a year later. I was at the big supermarket on the edge of town, the one with the good organic produce section. I was in uniform, having just come from base. I was tired but feeling good, picking out ingredients for a steak dinner I was going to cook for myself and Sarah. I turned the corner into the cereal aisle, and there he was. My father. He was standing in front of the generic oatmeal, holding a canister, staring at the price tag like it was a complex math equation. He wore a faded windbreaker I remembered from high school. His hair was thinner, completely white now. His shoulders were slumped in that permanent posture of defeat I knew so well. I froze. My first instinct, the old instinct, was to run. To abandon my cart and bolt for the exit. Don't let him see you. Don't engage. But then I remembered, I am a major in the United States Army. I own my home. I am not the scared little girl hiding in the guest room anymore. I took a breath, squared my shoulders and kept walking. He heard my boots on the linoleum. He looked up. His eyes widened. He took in the uniform, the rank insignia on my chest, the way I held my head high. For a second he looked terrified. Then, his face crumbled into a look of such naked longing it almost hurt to watch. "Zoe," he breathed. "Hello, Robert," I said. "Not Dad." "Robert." He flinched at the name. You look strong." "I am," I said. He looked down at my cart, steaks, wine, fresh asparagus. Then he looked at his own basket, oatmeal, a loaf of white bread, a carton of milk that was close to expiration. We miss you," he stammered. "Linda, she's changed. She's learned her lesson. We all have." "I'm glad to hear that," I said politely. "Growth is important." "Zoe, please," he took a half step toward me. "Can't we just have coffee? 5 minutes. I'm your father. I changed your diapers. I taught you to ride a bike." I looked at him. I remembered the bike lessons. He was patient then. But I also remembered him sitting at that dining table, watching Linda slide a piece of paper across the mahogany that would have shackled me to an $80,000 debt, and saying nothing. "You did teach me to ride a bike," I acknowledged softly. "But you also taught me that silence is a choice. And when you chose silence while Linda was stealing my identity, you made your choice for the rest of your life." I was scared, he whispered. "I'm an old man, Zoe. I didn't want to be alone. So you sacrificed me to keep her," I said. "That's the trade you made. And now you have to live with the receipt." I gripped the handle of my cart. "I have to go. Good luck, Robert." "Zoe," he called after me, his voice cracking. "I love you." I didn't turn around. I walked to the checkout, paid for my groceries, and walked out to my car. I sat in the driver's seat for 10 minutes, just breathing. My hands were steady. I didn't cry. That was the test. And I had passed. I thought that was the end of it, but the golden child had one last card to play. 2 days after seeing my father, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I opened it. "Hey sis. OMG, Dad said he saw you, and you looked amazing. Congrats on the promotion. Look, I know things got weird last year, and I'm super sorry. I was young and dumb. But I've totally matured. I have this incredible opportunity to buy into a crypto mining startup. It's legit this time. I just need a small seed investment, like $5,000. I'd pay you back with interest in 3 months. Dad said you'd probably want to help now that you've had time to cool off. Let me know. Love you. Hugs and kisses, Bella." I stared at the screen. I had to read it 3 times to believe the audacity. Dad said you'd probably want to help. Even after everything, after the lawyers, the eviction, the humiliation, they still saw me as the same thing, a wallet. A resource. They truly believed that time to cool off meant time to reset the victimhood counter. They didn't understand that I hadn't just cooled off. I had frozen over. I didn't block the number immediately. Instead, I took a screenshot. I saved it to the evidence folder, which I still kept, just in case. Then I replied, "This number is for official business only. Contacting me again will be considered harassment, and reported to your parole officer regarding your fraud probation. Do not text me again." The typing bubble appeared, then disappeared. I blocked the number. That night, I sat on my patio with Sarah. We were drinking the wine I bought, watching the sunset. "You know," Sarah said, looking at me. "Most people would have folded. Most people would have given them the money just to make the noise stop. I almost did, I admitted. For years, I thought the noise would stop if I just fed the beast. But the beast doesn't get full, Sarah. It just gets bigger. To the beast, Sarah raised her glass. May it starve to death. To the beast, I clinked my glass against hers. And to the fences we build to keep it out. The cemetery is quiet on Tuesday mornings. I like it that way. I visit my mother once a month. I don't bring flowers anymore, she hated cut flowers because they died too fast. Instead, I bring a thermos of coffee and I just sit. The grass is green and well kept. The headstone is simple granite. Helen Miller. Beloved mother. For a long time, coming here was painful. I used to come here to complain. I used to come here and cry, asking her why she left me alone with them. I used to feel like an orphan, drifting in a sea of sharks without a boat. But today, the feeling is different. I sat down on the small stone bench I had installed a few months ago. The wind was crisp, rustling the leaves of the oak tree nearby. I saw him, Mom, I said to the air. He looks old. He looks diminished. I took a sip of coffee. I didn't feel angry, I continued. I thought I would. I thought I would want to scream at him for everything he let happen. But I just felt distant. Like he was someone I used to know a long time ago. A neighbor who moved away. I looked at her name on the stone. You used to tell me to be a good girl, I smiled sadly. You told me to be kind, to share, to keep the peace. You raised me to be soft, Mom. And I love you for that. But softness almost destroyed me. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. I had to learn a new language, Mom. I had to learn the language of no. I had to learn that family isn't a suicide pact. It's not a blank check. You gave me life, but I had to save it. I sat there for a long time, watching a squirrel bury a nut near the oak tree. The squirrel was preparing for winter. It was instinct. It was survival. I realized then that I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. I had cut away the rot, and the healthy tissue had finally started to grow. My credit score was perfect. My home was secure. My heart was guarded, yes, but the gate was open for the right people, people like Sarah, people who earned their place. I stood up and brushed the grass off my uniform pants. I'm okay, Mom, I said, touching the top of the headstone. You don't have to worry about me. I'm not the girl who waits for permission anymore. I'm the woman who gives the orders. I walked back to my car, the gravel crunching under my boots. I felt light. The weight of the past, the debt, the guilt, the obligation, was gone. I had left it all behind, buried in a grave of its own making. I drove away, leaving the dead to rest and the living to learn. If you are listening to this story and feeling a knot in your stomach because it sounds familiar, if you have a Linda in your life, or a Robert who looks the other way, or a Bella who feels entitled to your hard work, please listen to me closely. I wrote this story not for revenge but for education. I learned these lessons the hard way, so you don't have to. Here are the 3 truths I need you to take away from my journey. Financial DNA is private. In many families, we are taught that money is a family resource. It is not. Your credit score, your savings, and your financial identity are yours alone. Sharing them should be a choice made with caution, not an obligation demanded by guilt. If a family member reacts with anger when you set a financial boundary, that is the biggest red flag you will ever see. Anger is the reaction of a thief who found a locked door. The enabler is just as dangerous as the abuser. My father never stole a dime from me directly. But he held the door open for the people who did. He prioritized his own comfort over my safety. Do not give the nice parent a pass just because they aren't the one holding the knife. Silence is complicity. No is a complete sentence. You do not need to explain, justify, or apologize for protecting your future. You don't owe anyone a lifestyle. The moment I stopped explaining and started informing, the power dynamic shifted. This is the moment that changed everything, when I finally took back control of my life. Thank you so much for being patient with me to get here, you are amazing. Please help me by liking the video and commenting, good, below, to let me know you appreciate the lessons this story brings. This not only helps more people find this story, but also tells me that my experiences mean something to someone. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to continue sharing the rest of this journey. Or, if you have a different perspective, tell me in the comments. Have you ever had to cut off a family member to save yourself? I read every single comment, and we can support each other in the discussion below. Stay safe, stay smart, and remember, you are the commander of your own life.